right. Welcome, everyone. For this session, we'll start with our meditation, and the meditation will include the motivation, and we'll be doing a meditation on Shakyamuni Buddha. So this combines a little bit of analysis and a little bit of placement, and really it's a way for you to tune in to your spiritual refuge. So if you're not sure if you want to connect with Shakyamuni Buddha specifically, you can just think radiant golden light, embodying those characteristics that you aspire to. So if you want to get yourself a good meditation posture, nice straight back. And just grounding yourself in your physical experience. You can take a few deep breaths if that helps you ground yourself. And then visualize. So straight in front of you, at about the height of a forehead, about a body's length away, visualize Guru Shakyamuni Buddha seated on a throne, everything in the nature of light. Visualize the beautiful throne, very large and square, adorned with many jewels. The throne is raised by 8 white snow lions, 2 at each corner. The snow lions look a little like Chinese lions, but with white fur and a green mane and tail. And these are not statues, but living, breathing animals. They are in reality manifestations of bodhisattvas, the holy beings who have attained bodhicitta. They also signify the wisdom of the Buddha. Because of all animals, snow lions are the only ones that have absolutely no fear at all. This is shown by the droopy ears. All other animals must keep their ear pricked for danger, but the snow lion has no such need. And so see if you can bring this image to your mind's eye, stabilizing as many of the details as you can without stressing out, without squeezing or pressure, particularly clarifying the throne, the snow lions. And then on the throne is a large, beautiful open lotus, on which is a sun and moon seat. These are very radiant, very bright, with the colors of the sun and moon respectively, but flat like discs or cushions. These 3 objects, the lotus, sun, and moon, represent the attainment of the 3 principal aspects of the path: renunciation, emptiness, and bodhicitta. And so stabilize the visualization of not just the throne and the lions, but the lotus, sun, and full moon. Seated on this is the omniscient mind of all the Buddhas, manifested as Guru Shakyamuni Buddha, who has attained these realizations. You can see the Buddha as the absolute Guru. The Buddha is in the aspect of a monk. You should not see his body as something solid like bronze or a plaster statue, but made of radiant golden light, representing his holy mind. Light rays radiate out from it. He wears the saffron robes of a monk. The robes don't actually touch his body. All is made of light, three-dimensional, real, radiant. Clarifying the Buddha himself. The Buddha is seated on a vajra or in the full lotus position, with his feet resting on the opposite thighs, soles upward. The palm of his right hand rests on his right knee, the fingers extended down and touching the moon cushion. This is called the earth-controlling mudra, signifying that he has great control and that he is in touch with reality. His left hand is in his lap in the meditation mudra, holding a bowl filled with nectar. The nectar is medicine capable of curing all the disturbing emotions, traditionally what we call maras. It has the power to control death, as well as purify the mind and body aggregates caused by karma and delusion, from which all suffering arises. This bowl of nectar is not there to purify Guru Shakyamuni Buddha's delusions. He is already free from them, but to purify ours. It is medicine for us. And so holding some of those ideas, imbuing them with this image, clarifying the details that you're able to, hold as much in as you can in your mind without it becoming tight. The most important part is to feel that the enlightened mind is present here and now. Shakyamuni Buddha is very beautiful and smiling, compassionate, elongated eyes and a gentle look, like a loving father, gazing at you and at the same time all sentient beings. It's a face you can never tire of looking at. No matter how much you look, you can always look more. It is just so beautiful and so magnificent. Just by seeing it, it brings incredible bliss. His look seems to tell you, my child, if you want to be free from suffering, I will guide you. He has long ears and reddish lips, and his hair is blue-black, with each hair individually curling to the right. At his forehead, between his eyebrows, there is a curl. It is unique in that it can be stretched out and naturally curls again like rubber. Each feature has significance. Each part of the 32 major signs and 80 minor exemplifications of an enlightened being. Rays of light emanate out from every pore of the Buddha's holy body, touching every part of the universe. These rays are actually countless tiny emanations of the Buddha, going out to help all sentient beings, and then dissolving back into his body. Light going out, light coming in, light going out, light coming in, again and again. And holding that thought, now we bring refuge in bodhicitta as our motivation. Sangye churon sogi chunam lam, janchu padu dani kapsuchi, dagi jinsogi pe sonam ki, drola penche sangye drupasho, sangye churon sogi chunam lam, janchu padu dani kapsuchi, Dagi jinso gi pe sonam gi, drola penja sange drupa sho, sange churon sogi chunam la, janchu padu dani kapsuchi, dagi jinso gi pe sonam gi, drola penja sange drupa sho. And so stabilizing the meaning, you can think of the Buddha as like the doctor, the Dharma like the medicine, the Sangha like the nurses, bringing you into the fundamental health and strength that is your birthright, that is your Buddha nature. And wanting that level of health and strength such that we're of greatest benefit to all. And layering in the four immeasurables, may all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. Stabilizing that love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And then adding the 7-limb prayer. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions, accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence, and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. Short mandala. Wasaji Boiki Joshin Meito Dramri Rablingji Ni De Gen Padi Sangye Jindu Mi Te Wa Nidro Kunamda Jin La Chu Pasho Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniyatayami. And now expand the visualization of the Buddha to include all sentient beings surrounding you. You can think like last week, all of your female relatives to the left, male relatives to the right, loved ones who are unrelated behind you, people you have difficulty with in front, and all around the edge, all the strangers, all species, all sentient beings surrounding you. And then think, I've received this perfect human rebirth and have met both the infallible teachings and the infallible teachers who can lead me on the path to enlightenment, releasing me from all suffering and allowing me to attain ultimate happiness. This is not so with all these other kind mother sentient beings who have been my mother countless times and have been so kind to me. In order to help them be free from their terrible suffering, I will do this meditation and attain the state of Buddhahood myself. Stabilizing that. And then request from your heart, please purify me and all sentient beings from the delusions, obscurations, sicknesses, and afflictions. And visualize a stream of rays of white nectar coming from Guru Shakyamuni Buddha's heart, flowing into you, entering through the crown of your head. As it flows into you, repeat this prayer 3 times. To the Guru, Founder, Bhagawan, Tathagata Arhat, perfectly completed Buddha, glorious conqueror Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. Please grant me your blessings. To the Guru, Founder, Bhagawan, Tathagata Arhat, perfectly completed Buddha, glorious conqueror Shakyamuni Buddha, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. Please grant me your blessings. To the Guru, Founder, Bhagawan, Tathagata Arhat, perfectly completed Buddha, glorious conqueror Shakyamuni Buddha, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. Please grant me your blessings. And think that in response, radiant rays of white nectar slowly fill your body, completely purifying all your delusions. Feel they're pouring strongly into you, like when you stand under a strong shower. As soon as the rays touch and flow into your body, a sensation of infinite mental and physical bliss fills you. So see if you can hold that visualization or those ideas as we add the mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha. Tayata Om Mune Mune Maha Munaye So 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 Tayata Om Mune Mune Maha Munaye So. And continue the mantra under your breath, together with the visualization. Tayata Om Mune Mune Maha Munaye So. Feel your body is completely full of radiant white light. Think all my delusions and sicknesses, as well as all the afflictions caused by the external spirits, are completely purified. And now visualize a stream of golden nectar coming from Guru Shakyamuni Buddha's heart, flowing into you, entering through the crown of your head. This light is the essence of the Buddha's holy body, holy speech, and holy mind. As your body fills with this golden light, feel infinitely blissful mentally and physically. And again, add the mantra to that visualization. Tayata Om Mune Mune Maha Munae Soha. 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 And continue the mantra under your breath, together with the visualization, golden nectar, bringing blessings. Tayata Om Mune Mune Maha Munae Soha. Tayata Om Mune Mune Maha Munae Soha. Feel you're completely filled with the Buddha's radiant golden light and have attained the qualities of the Buddha's holy body, holy speech, and holy mind. Then the snow lions dissolve into the throne dissolves into the lotus dissolves into the sun and moon. They dissolve into Guru Shakyamuni Buddha, who comes to the crown of your head, melts into light, dissolves into your body. Feel that all wrong conceptions are completely destroyed. Everything becomes completely empty of inherent existence. Your mind becomes the blissful, omniscient mind of the Buddha. And feel that you are the Buddha just for a moment. Adopting that attitude that your future enlightenment is happening now. And light beams radiate from your holy body. At the tip of each light beam is a tiny Shakyamuni Buddha. All these Shakyamuni Buddhas enter and absorb into each and every sentient being, purifying all their sufferings and its causes, delusion and negative karma. Then the light beams with the Shakyamuni Buddhas at their tips return and absorb into you. Light going out from you, light coming back in, back and forth, purifying sentient beings. And then rejoice by thinking how wonderful it is that I've enlightened all sentient beings, taking that future result as the path, just for a moment. Be with that future, that potential, actualized. And then dedicate, by the merits of having done this meditation practice, may I attain the enlightened state of Guru Shakyamuni Buddha and lead all other sentient beings to that enlightened state. And you, as the Buddha, come back to your ordinary form, holding with it the awareness of your future, thinking, I will be a Buddha. All sentient beings will be Buddhas. This is our nature. This is our potential. And I've already begun now. And then relaxing your attention. Okay. So that is the classic Shakyamuni Buddha meditation. And Shakyamuni Buddha is one of the only deities that you can see yourself as in the practice context without having had an empowerment first. All the other deities, you need an empowerment first to see yourself as that Buddha. Otherwise, the practice won't be effective and could create a lot of obstacles. But Shakyamuni Buddha is the exception. And having this idea of taking the result as the path or ripening your mind for Buddhahood by rehearsing your own Buddhahood brings you closer to that state. The side effects of this practice are kind of more openness and receptivity to the Buddha's really connecting with you now, really an ability to purify the mind and develop merit, but it also helps your concentration. Simple as that. Just trying to visualize while holding things in mind, these kind of multitasking meditations where you're emphasizing different inner sensorial experiences like vision, like sound, etc., can be a really good way of developing concentration. So, how did it go?
Yeah, if I,
Oh, you've just muted yourself.
there we
There you
go.
go.
I'm unmuted. Okay. Just a quick question. It may only apply to me. I do various practices with people online, and I find that if I repeat the actual mantra, chanting, etc., I find it distracting. I find a much stronger emotional connection if I simply listen. But my question is there a disadvantage in that. Yeah.
It's good to know yourself and to experiment in different ways. Saying the mantra aloud helps purify verbal negative karma. Saying prayers aloud helps purify verbal negative karma. So think of how much of our negative karma is mainly through the speech. Once you're sort of a nice person and you're not getting up to all sorts of physical nonsense, then most of it comes into our speech with like harsh criticism and divisiveness and lying and these kinds of things. So when you say a mantra or a prayer, it stands in direct opposition to that negative karma that we do verbally. So that's one benefit. But if it helps you stabilize your concentration to hear it in your ears and then kind of hear it in your mind's ear, that is what we call mental recitation in Buddhist Tantra. And it has its own benefit and it has its own power.
Okay.
So I would experiment with both ways, but just know there is that added benefit when you say it aloud, especially just to launch it, right? We just do 7 aloud, and then we do quite a few silently under our breath, continuing the visualization. So even though it's silent, you're still having breath come out your mouth, which still helps purify your speech
Yeah.
and brings in
Okay.
blessings.
I feel almost like I'm dyslexic with this. It's that there's some sort of, my brain doesn't seem to be hooked up properly to be able to do two tasks at once is where I'm coming to. So
Well,
I'll
and
play
you're
with
not. That's the thing is you're adopting the attitude that you are, but
it.
you're not. No one is at our level. What you're doing is you're kind of pivoting back and forth between emphasizing the visualization and emphasizing the mantra. And it's kind of like when you're driving and you're aware of the gear shift and you're aware of the wheel, but you're really focused out the windscreen or the windshield. And you're aware of, I need to check this mirror or that mirror. And all of those are kind of in the background, but you're really only forefront with one thing at a time, even though they ping around quite quickly. And so with these kind of meditations, it's like you're holding many things in your mind simultaneously, like when you're driving, but you're actually only emphasizing one thing at a time, even though they rotate quite quickly. So it's kind of like you get the visualization warmed up, and that's why we spend a fair bit of time warming up the visualization. Like, here's the Buddha. Now here's the details step by step. Stabilize that. Now think, what are the qualities of the Buddha? Imbue that image with that. Now here's the movement of light and the addition of mantra. You build it up slowly. And then when you're in the mantra recitation time, you just let your mind hold what it's able to without stress or pressure. And the benefit of these kind of meditations is that if you get so good at it that you're bored, that means you have enough mental space to add in a layer of elaboration and depth. But in the beginning, it's too much detail and it's overwhelming. So all you can think is golden light out there, somehow representing my refuge or just compassion. May I be connected to it? And then, gradually you're able to bring in more and more details. So yeah, so basically just add in as much as you can without the mind getting tense. And if the mind starts to get tense, then soften the edges of the details or how much you're expecting of yourself to hold. If you're getting bored or dissociative or vague, sharpen up the edges and bring in a little bit more effort. So it's just kind of moving between not too tight, not too loose, however you are in that particular session.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Other thoughts? How did it go for anybody else? Were there bits that you connected with or bits that you didn't?
I
Hussein? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Dana.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Sorry. I thought someone else was going. Um, I also had, I'm so glad you described this this problem of losing the visualization as I added the mantra. I'm still sort of learning that mantra. I feel like seeing it on the screen and repeating it is so I learned that way. So I
Mhm.
sort of drop the drop the visualization, focus on the mantra, but I can see it just like driving a car where eventually you don't even realize that you're checking all the windows, but you are,
Yeah.
right? So I can definitely see that. I also found my mind resisting in some way, like having questions around, well, partly the idea of a deity and the um, purification in the situation of karma and how that, and so there was this resistance around, you know, you can't just come in and it's what my mind is saying. You can't just come in and purify this. I thought I'm learning about karma and it don't get to do that. So
Yep.
like finding that extra little spot where I can understand some of this logically. So there's still some resistance there, but
Yeah, and it's good it's good to play with your relationship to resistance, because of course talking over the top of the resistance is no good. And saying, no, 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 I'm fine. That's no good. We don't want suppression. But also going down the like splitting rabbit hole while you're trying to stay in one structure also can kind of water down the practice. So what you want to do is try and get this idea of that is an intriguing point, that is feeling either confusing or problematic or inspiring or intriguing, whatever it is, it's lighting up for me. Put a pin in that, keep going. And it's kind of like, all right, put a pin in that. Anyway, move to the next bit. Ooh, what does that mean? All right, put a pin in that. Anyway, keep going, keep going. And that way you're getting some benefit from the practice without kind of going out into the weeds, but you're also not dishonoring your own wisdom that is flagged points that need clarification for you. So it's the ability to go curious, come back to that, but right now this. Huh, what is that? Okay, but come back to this. Yeah, so you're not suppressing, you're not indulging. And with all things Tantra or Tantra adjacent, you're adopting an attitude which might not be the literal thing that's happening. It's by adopting an attitude that starts to shift the way you see yourself and others. So, of course, literally, you cannot purify anyone, and the Buddha cannot purify you. But we all can be very powerful conditions for each other, and the Buddha is a very powerful condition for us. So, for us to think that the embodiment of our potential and the potential of all living beings is something that there have been beings who have actualized. Let's pick one. Let's say it's Shakyamuni Buddha, but it can be any number of individual consciousnesses that have developed to their utmost extent. It doesn't have to be him. It could be anybody. It could be Tara, whatever. But you think, do I believe the mind can transform? Do I believe that that transformation is akin to some sort of divinity, not in a Judeo-Christian sense of creator God, but in the Buddhist sense of a mind that's free of suffering and afflictions and is completely able to see the minds of all, so it knows how to be a condition in a precise way, as opposed to our way, which is an educated guess. Is the mind transformable? This is kind of the basic thing we're working with looking at mind and its potential. So think that there have been beings who have gotten the job done, and for now we will decide that they are represented by Shakyamuni Buddha, and he looks this way. And by visualizing that, that came from an enlightened mind, that image of Shakyamuni Buddha. Of course, like Fred drew it, right? Fred's a great artist, but his rendering is not random. The proportions, the grid behind it, the features and characteristics that are there, those all came from the enlightened mind. The Thangka painter tries to do their best to represent that as best as they can, but these are not incidental images. They are very intentional images. So there's a power in trying to bring them to mind. And the idea is that it helps wake up the seeds of your own enlightenment. So there's much to unpack, right? Much to unpack. And I think when you're doing these kind of meditations that are seemingly basic, you realize how not basic they are. There's all sorts of little nuggets of, oh, I think I need to study more on that. Wait, what is that? And it's really easy to get kind of going down a rabbit hole. But if you can say, I'll circle back to that, but right now, what is the essence of what I'm doing? It's connecting with the fact that my mind can transform and that others have transformed their mind, and I can actually use them as support. So they're not purifying you, they're not blessing you, but you asking them to purify and bless you creates a receptivity and an openness for them to be the sort of condition that can get to your heart. And it's just like an elevated version of you can hear advice from a good friend if you're in the mood for advice. Yeah, if you're in the mood for advice, their advice can land and you can take it to heart and marry it with your inner wisdom and go, that has the ring of truth. I will try that. But if you're shut down, even if your friend has great advice, it's just going to bounce off the top. Right? So these practices create a receptivity to elevated minds, but it's not thinking you're down here below and they're way up there above. It's thinking you're going to meet them there. What they've already done, you're in the process of doing. So I don't know if that clarifies bits. Do you have a follow-up?
Um, that was really, really helpful. I guess I do, so far as um a question about what the belief actually is. Is it that they these beings truly do not or cannot really affect our karma beyond creating the conditions to try to be supportive, and that so we maintain whatever it is, the free will, the working with our own karma.
I mean, if the Buddha could take you out of suffering and place you into stable happiness, they would, right? They don't want you to just suffer for its own sake. It's not like a journey or a teaching. They don't want you to suffer. They know what suffering's like. They themselves suffered once. They are of a similar type. But by asking for their support, you're creating a receptivity to the best backup you could hope for, which is not nothing. So they're not going to save you or fix you, but you being open to support really has a huge benefit. And so really use your ordinary logic of that, of there's plenty of things you can get done all by yourself-ish, although nothing is really done independently, but seems so. But when you've got backup, you really are a lot more efficient. You have a lot more momentum. Your experience of things is a lot more joyful. And all that an enlightened being wants to do is be that sort of condition for you. You know, just like you would want to be like that for your friends and your family now as you are right now, not even enlightened yet. We already want that for each other when we're focused, when we remember, right? Imagine if we were focused and remembered, you know, at its most high elevated extent. Yeah, so it's not saying, Buddha, please save me. It's saying, I am a little seed that would like to be watered. Some water, please. Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
But you're the seed. Yeah, or you carry the seed. So this is one of many types of meditation, and in the How to Meditate module, Venerable Angie will go into more details about the different kinds, but basically you have single-pointed meditations and analytical meditations, and then meditations that combine aspects of both. And meditations that combine aspects of both in our tradition are most commonly found in Buddhist Tantra. But the point of Buddhist Tantra is to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. Yeah, that's the point of Tantra. It's not for some sort of miscellaneous spiritual adventure or some sort of like playing with your chakras or something. It's not for entertainment, I guess. It's not for hedonism. It's has a very specific purpose, and it's probably different than it looks like when you see the iconography, because all of this is about mental transformation. Yeah. So anyway, that's your kind of intro to Tantra tidbit. The actual intro to Tantra course, of course, is the very end of Discovering Buddhism's program, but it's coming up, and it's a very interesting one. So today we're going to do a little bit on a different framework of how is it that you develop a realization. And how you develop a realization, how do you shift something from an understanding to something that's so stable that it colors everything else? And what we talk about in Buddhism are valid cognitions or reliable cognizers. And this is how we access different levels of subtlety of phenomena. So direct, reliable cognizers apprehend evident or manifest phenomena. Factual, reliable cognizers apprehend slightly obscure or hidden phenomena. And inferential, reliable cognizers by authoritative testimony apprehend very obscure or extremely hidden phenomena. So that sounds like a lot, and that's a lot of like weird words, but it becomes quite interesting when it gets unpacked. So when direct perception is not mistaken with regard to its object, it's called valid cognition. In Sanskrit, the term is pramana, and the term is used in both Buddhist and non-Buddhist epistemology. So non-Buddhist schools generally use this term to refer to two things: an instrument for gaining knowledge of an object and the knowledge itself. For Buddhist schools, pramana refers to the knowledge itself. It's a non-deceptive cognition. Dharmakirti and Dignata assert that consciousness is only valid and correct if it is non-deceptive, and if so, then that consciousness is pramana. So we start with evident things, right? Evident, and then slightly obscure, and then very obscure. And these three categories are described in relation to ordinary sentient beings, not Aryas. So Aryas are beings who have realized emptiness directly or perceptually. Okay. So for an Arya, subtle impermanence and selflessness are evident or manifest phenomena, whereas for us, they're slightly obscure. There are no obscure objects for Buddhas because they're omniscient. Okay, so what are we on about here with this particular presentation? What are we on about? We're talking about how does one see levels of subtlety of reality, and then in being able to access that, what do you do with that information? So at our level, for ordinary people like us, we only see what is obvious or manifest, which means we're really only working with the data that comes from our senses for the most part. But there is more to reality than the data that comes from our senses. And so in order to access that, we need a realization. And that realization process comes through meditation, purification, and accumulation of merit. So what are some subtler things that it would be nice to know directly? One of them is karma, right? Wouldn't you like to know your karma? Wouldn't you like to know your past lives? Wouldn't you like to know how on earth you wound up this way? Not just the rabbit hole of your ancestors, but like cosmically, how did you get this way? The other is to understand the whole spectrum of dependent arising, to understand how everything comes about. And so these levels of phenomena we can't access at our level, but we will be able to eventually. So we'll just talk a little bit about this and see what questions you have after the basic rundown, okay? Okay, so for you folks that know about tenets, Prasangikas describe evident and obscure phenomena differently, saying that evident objects are those that can be known through our own experience without depending on inference, for example, sense objects. But putting that aside, obscure objects must initially be known depending on a reason. So they're objects of inference, for example, the subtle impermanence of the body and the selflessness of the person. Okay, so evident manifest phenomena. These is what I was just talking about. Ordinary beings can easily perceive external things like colors, sounds, odors, tastes, tangible objects, which are known by direct, reliable cognizers that correspond to our 5 physical senses, and internal objects. Objects is a weird word, but you understand. Objects such as feelings of happiness, pain, hopes, desires, which are known by the mental consciousness. So do you remember in minds and mental factors, we were talking mostly about mental factors, but there are 6 main minds, right? The 5 that are sense-based or related, and the 6th, which is mental. So we're kind of talking about main minds in this context. Okay. So we can see these. These are known through direct, reliable cognizers. So basically, this is what is obvious to ordinary sentient beings through either sensory experience or like how we would colloquially describe introspection. Then slightly obscure or hidden phenomena, for us, must initially known by a factual inferential cognizer based on a reason. So, examples of slightly obscure phenomena are subtle impermanence, the momentary arising and ceasing of conditioned things, and selflessness. So the fact that the apple arises in dependence on causes and conditions is part of the conventional nature of the apple. Through understanding that its existence is the result of causes and conditions, we can know that an apple is impermanent. Or the sun setting in the west is course change that's evident to our visual sense. But to understand the sun's subtle, changeable nature, we must use reasoning. The sun rose in the east in order to set in the west. It must move continuously, moment by moment, imperceptibly across the sky. This momentary change cannot be detected by our eyes. We need reasoning to know it. Now, of course, we know that we're going around the sun. The sun's not going around us, but the movement, you know that for the sun to set in the west, it started in the east. You know that, but the sequential tick, 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 tick of it moving is too subtle. The reason we understand that is through reasoning. Does it make sense so far? Right? So subtle phenomena or slightly obscure phenomena, you need to understand by reasoning. A classic example is if in the distance you see smoke on a mountain, you can infer that there's fire there, but you can't directly see the fire. You know through reasoning that if there is smoke there, there's some sort of combustion happening. So this is useful for us because we might think that something very magical, like the realization of the emptiness of inherent existence, is something that just happens through, I don't know, meditating on spaciousness or meditating on the clarity of the mind alone, when in fact it needs reasoning. Yeah, you need a lot of reasoning, a lot of intellectualization, a lot of concepts to move into perception, to move into direct contact with these realities. An ordinary everyday example might be something like some simple truth that you believed and understood, but didn't sink in. Like your grandmother told you when you were 7 years old, treat others the way you would like to be treated. Yes, something simple, and you're like, yeah, sure, fair enough, why, whatever. And you might not have thought about it much, but you knew that it would make her happy if you lived like that, or you would not get in trouble if you lived like that. And it was a coarse understanding, but you were on board. And then you got a little older and you were sharing something. And you thought, I really love this dessert. I'm going to give it to my best friend. And your best friend was like, oh my gosh, I love that dessert. And they were happy. And you thought, oh, I just treated them the way I would like to be treated. And that made our relationship better. So you had more data. And then you became a teenager or an adult, and there was some moment of truth where it clicked, and that thing that you'd known for years went from your head to your heart. And you went, oh, the way I live needs to be like this. What do people want? They want the same things as me. They want to be happy. They don't want to suffer. I need to treat them the way I'd like to be treated. This is the only way that makes sense. And it sunk in, right? It had the ring of truth. But it's not a different sentence than you knew when you were 7. But it went in through repetition and experience. And so for us to understand slightly obscure phenomena, we need a precise logic. We need kind of whiffs of experience. They're not quite experience, but they're like nearly there. And then repeat, 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 and it sinks in. So for something like the emptiness of inherent existence, which is a very complicated philosophical concept in Buddhism that often gets oversimplified, right? You need a line of reasoning, something like all phenomena lack inherent existence, they're empty of inherent existence, because they dependently arise. If they dependently arise, that means they lack inherence. If they lack inherence, that must mean they're dependent. And that is a solid line of reasoning, but it's only going to have the ring of truth if you slow down and unpack it using your own logic and experience. You're like, okay, dependent arising. It arises in dependence upon causes and conditions, upon parts, upon context, upon a mind in a valid basis. Right, nothing comes out about spontaneously out of nowhere from nothing. I know that from science. I also know that from experience. And yet I feel like there's some sort of independent core me that gathers experiences to it or sheds traits from it, but feels like there's a solid inherent core there. That's my feeling, but now logically that doesn't hold water. How can I experientially touch that? I have to start with logic. So it's a delicate dance between intellectualizing and over-intellectualizing, between touching something experiential and thinking it needs to be experiential in order for it to be valid. Yeah. For us, we often take a vivid experience as criteria for it being true, but we have all sorts of vivid experiences that are absolutely pointing us to illusion. Yeah. You can see someone across the street that you think is your best friend because they look like your best friend from a distance, and you can have your heart lift and get smiley and be excited to see them to the same exact degree as if it was actually your friend there. Right? So it feels like your friend gave you that feeling by existing in your life, but you've just had that feeling in relationship to a stranger based on your projection. So vividness is not a criteria for truth. It can be good information. Sure, trust your gut, all of that. But what we're looking at is the use of logic will actually amplify your ability to touch an experience. And if you want to access things that are subtler than the obvious, you're going to need to make your brain work. Yeah. And of course, your mind uses your brain. So if you can get those juices flowing, it's going to lead to an understanding of reality much more subtly. Okay, so here's an example. So to know a slightly obscure phenomena such as selflessness or emptiness, for example, the absence of a permanent, independent soul or self, we might use the reason of dependence and think of this syllogism. Consider a person. She does not exist as a permanent, in the sense of unchanging, permanent, partless, under its own power, soul, or self, because she depends on her body and mind. And the body and mind also don't exist in a permanent, partless, under its own power way, as we can see with science, as we can see with experience. And so that makes some sort of sense, but you need to roll it around in your mind quite a bit for it to touch you. But having done so, you're closer to being able to touch hidden phenomena. These are known through factual, reliable cognizers. Okay. So then slightly obscure or hidden phenomena that have to be known initially by factual reasons are basically what becomes deeply understood through thorough reasoning and logical processing, right? You can understand hidden phenomena through reasoning and processing. Okay, and then we have very obscure, and then we're done with lists. Okay, so this is what is known by ordinary sentient beings by relying on inferential reliable cognizers by authoritative testimony, the attestation of someone who is authoritative in that field. So like we know our birthday by asking our mother because she has authority about our birth, right? And we understand the subtle intricacies of karma by depending on the Buddhist teachings. While atoms and subatomic particles are slightly obscure phenomena that can be known by inference, most of us rely on the testimony of scientists to know their existence and characteristics. So when we're looking at authoritative testimony, we're looking at who is the source of the information that we're coming into some faith with. So these are known through inferential reliable cognizers by authoritative testimony. So first, having established that the Buddha is, quote, a valid being with many quickly provable teachings like those on patience, love, attachment, right? We then take it on faith based in reason that these esoteric teachings are true as well and will be provable through our own experience eventually. Okay. So these are the three types of phenomena. And these are the 3 types of valid cognition. Okay, this is just an introduction. Okay. All right. This is a really interesting topic. It falls under the heading of awarenesses and knowers, or the 7 types of awareness. And it's something that becomes more and more relevant as your practice develops and you wonder what's going to help facilitate progress if you get stuck in a certain part of your practice. But the idea that something like the emptiness of inherent existence is subtle, but karma is extremely subtle. This points to something in terms of how we approach our spiritual path, right? Because it might seem like karma is much easier to understand, and it is intellectually much easier to understand than emptiness. But experientially, how would you come to understand all of the causes and conditions for even some simple thing like the cup, all of the atoms, right? The story of all of the atoms, the paint and the porcelain and the development of cups. I mean, all of the different causes and conditions of one simple thing, far more subtle than that one simple thing's lack of inherent existence. Yeah, you can prove this thing's lack of inherent existence logically just by going, oh, because it depends upon parts. It depends on a mind to label it on the valid basis of its worldly convention as something that holds water. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we'll take a little break and just kind of breathe a little bit and think a little bit about these things. And then we'll talk about what questions you might have. Okay. So let's do 5 minutes. Okay. So that whole set of information is kind of just to plant the seeds to see if you want to keep studying some of the more advanced topics within the philosophical systems of Tibetan Buddhism. If you don't, it's really no worries. The main thing is to understand main minds, mental factors, and the way that they enable the mind to function, and which ones you can really start to get to train to work for you rather than against you. So if you're curious about more with this particular topic, I really recommend a couple of titles, and this is all in your course materials, but just to flag them. This middle one, The Foundation of Buddhist Practice by His Holiness and Venerable Thupten Chodron, this is where a lot of the content of today's slides came from, and it's very clear. A bit more advanced is Science and Philosophy in the Indian Buddhist Classics, Volume 2, The Mind. This was compiled by Thupten Jinpa, who was one of His Holiness's translators for many years. And then Mind and Its Functions is kind of a short overview. Also is the series, some of you know, the Foundation of Buddhist Thought series by Geshe Tashi Sering. Buddhist Psychology, it makes it sound like it's less technical than it is, but it's actually a very straightforward read. And then super experiential and not as technical at all is The World and Ourselves by Thupten Gyatso, Dr. Adrian Fellman. And then the root text that most of this Minds and Mental Factors came from is the classic text from the Master's Program, which is A Necklace for Those of Clear Awareness, clearly revealing the modes of Minds and Mental Factors by Khenche Yeshe Geltsen. So those are all in your course materials, but just to kind of flag, I think if you're really into things of this level, the Library of Wisdom and Compassion series is really beautiful. And volume 2 is the one on the mind. Yeah. Right, so any questions about that particular presentation of kind of the levels of phenomena and the minds that can perceive them, or anything from the course as a whole? This is our last practice session, and then we'll do meditation in our other session that's remaining. Yeah, Larissa.
Yeah, thank you. I'm trying to fit that you just showed us in the big picture, and those definitions of types of phenomena, are they related to both types of phenomena, impermanent and permanent?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's kind of about the minds that are able to see them. You know, it sounds very much like we're talking about different kinds of phenomena, and in a way we are, but it's more like who can see the most amount. And, a Buddha is who can see everything. Then we have Arya beings who have realized emptiness directly or perceptually, and they're able to see more things. And then there's us, right? So, yeah, kind of like that. And there's a cat pulling focus, excuse me. So when we're looking at these levels of phenomena, I think most immediately applicable is to think about how extremely hidden phenomena like karma, you can't prove experientially yes or no at our level, right? It's something that makes sense, that positive actions lead to happiness, negative actions lead to suffering. That makes some sense to us. But to actually see the spectrum of the way these things play out in terms of causation is extremely hidden. And so to have some conviction that the teachings on karma are as they are stated, we have to see that the Buddha is a valid being, which is not an invitation for blind faith, not at all. What you do is you take teachings that are related to manifest course phenomena. You take teachings related to immediate experiences, like how anger can be prevented by a mind of patience or love, or the way in which if you stabilize the mind on one single pointed object, you will come to more natural clarity. Things that are obvious and clear enough to try, and then having tried them, you see that what the Buddha said was true. And that reinforces a faith based in reason, a faith based in logic and experience that makes you say, the things I can't prove yet, he's probably telling the truth. So it's that kind of faith when it comes to the subjects that you can't immediately prove yes or no either way at our level. So the Buddha as a valid being, that's kind of the thought to play with. And the Buddha as a valid being is not saying he's the only valid being or that his teachings are the only valid teachings, not at all. There's many enlightened beings, there's many valid teachings. But for us to feel some conviction that the Buddhist path has accuracy, has benefit, we need to sit with who is the teacher. Why should I trust him? So you test those teachings that are testable at our level. And then that gives you enough faith to check and really sit. Can I go along with the ones that are going to take a while for me to be sure of? Does that make sense? That approach? Yeah, Leo, go ahead.
Yeah, like my question is a little bit about what you just said. When we talk about the hidden phenomena, does it have to do with a little bit of belief, because I feel that inevitably we have to rely on like a valid source. And that led me to this thinking, like if it's a belief, like a little dose of belief, I don't know, but that's the first point. And my second point is, does the Vajrayana practice and this whole spectrum of visualizations, does it help us to reach this extremely hidden phenomena too? Because I don't know, like I feel that the amount of visualizations that we do when we are practicing Vajrayana, I feel that sometimes we are able to maybe understand at least by the ways of the thought about that some subject, you know what I mean? Yeah, so these 2 points.
I mean, certainly Vajrayana practice helps you access hidden phenomena quicker. We will still need to wait until we're actually a Buddha to see extremely hidden phenomena. Yeah, we will need complete omniscience for extremely hidden phenomena. But getting closer and closer to it will happen, especially once we've realized reality. So, I think that the faith that we're being asked or invited to connect with in Buddhism, it really has to come from a place of, I think, deep faith in your own mind's ability to recognize wisdom. Yeah. Can you recognize wisdom when you hear it from whatever source? If you feel you can recognize wisdom, or you can recognize validity, you can recognize tools that are useful, at least at some level, you take that trust in yourself and you match it up with the teachings you come across and ask, do they have the ring of truth? Does their source seem to have some stability to it? Is there some stability that I can see in the highest level of practitioners of it? Are there people to look up to? And it's something that's very individual, and it's completely fine to like bits of Buddhism and use bits of Buddhism to improve the contentment of your daily life. That's fine. It's an open religion. You don't have to be Buddhist to practice Buddhism. But if you think that you may be a Buddhist or want to really go all in, it takes a lot of this sitting with, do I believe that the Buddha was a valid being? Do I believe that he understood reality? Do I really have conviction that he had omniscience? Is omniscience even possible? So, did he know all knowable phenomena and then teach based on that knowledge? A lot of it's going to have to live in ambiguity for a while, but you can have enough conviction to kind of experiment and try. And from a Buddhist perspective, the Buddha doesn't need you to sign on a dotted line. He doesn't need you to prove your allegiance. It's nothing like that nonsense. Yeah, it's really, does it resonate with you? Yeah, Ladan, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I have a question. Pardon me. I wanted to know if it's a wrong view or oh hello, or it's if I am in the beginning of something. Actually, when we say impermanence, and in some meditation for example, when I try to see like motion during the day or reverse meditation as you helped us to do, between thoughts or between like when you are breathing, there's a moment that there's nothing.
Mhm.
And sometimes I think that it is the beginning of like emptiness, because there's no good try, but
But that gap, that kind of moment of silence, or that moment of settledness, or that moment of clarity, that is coming closer to understanding the relative nature of mind. That's coming closer to doing a clarity of mind meditation with more precision, to stay in the gap, to stay in the spaciousness. But the relative nature of the mind is not the ultimate nature of the mind. The ultimate nature of mind is its absence of inherent existence. And you do need to go through a line of reasoning and have some clarity about what exactly we're talking about here, because emptiness doesn't mean space. Emptiness doesn't mean nothingness. Emptiness is a non-affirming negation that doesn't imply anything in its place. It's like a space of potentiality. Yeah. Think of really like a womb, right? A womb is space, but it's where life comes from. Emptiness is like that. It's like palpable potentiality. It's not nothingness. It's what allows things to arise and change.
exactly, because when you say between two thoughts, when you have a gap, that
Yes.
is what gave you the possibility to have another one.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about. You're mixing things together, and I understand why you would, and it makes sense why you would. But the spaciousness that you find in meditation is not a realization of emptiness. It's coming closer to a subtler level of mind, and is really good and really moving in the right direction, but it's not a meditation on emptiness. And if you have no thoughts and you're blanking out and you're off with the fairies, that's actually a bad meditation. Right?
Yeah,
That's not what we're aiming for. Yeah.
I have never blanked out. It's always everything comes together. But
The
yeah,
opposite.
thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for your question. Yeah, it's understandable. The way we use words in Buddhism is exasperating sometimes. So yeah. Other thoughts, other questions about today's content or anything in previous classes?
I have a question.
Sure.
It's a generic question again. I would like to revise the material
Hmm.
and look at all the slides. Do you have any advice on how to revise the material? Because I have the slides
Mhm.
for each of the sessions,
Yep.
and I'm thinking I should probably go over all the slides, or is it such that if I revise the last set of slides that we receive, I'll be reading all the content, you know what I mean? Does it contain everything, or should I just look at each of the slides separately?
They're just specific to the session material that we talked about each session. So, in some sessions we did review, in some sessions we didn't. And I think that probably the best approach for revision would be, rather than to look at the slides, use the slides as notes, and just kind of like, oh yeah, I remember we talked about that. Oh yeah, that. But actually would be to use one of the source materials. So in that recommended reading list, that foundation of Buddhist practice, that I think would probably be the clearest. And it has a really, really good glossary as well. So this middle one, this is the one I would recommend if you want to revise the material. And
Okay.
it's available electronically, it's available hard copy, and most libraries probably have it by now. So the foundation of Buddhist practice, I think, would be a really good way to revise. And then the one next to it, Science and Philosophy and the Indian Buddhist Classics, that's if you want to increase your content and go deeper into the same stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's a good question. And, for our practice day, we're going to be doing mainly the meditations we did before, but in such a way that I want you to be able to do them by yourself without me at the end of it. So really think of any questions you had about any of those meditations, or the ways to approach them, or the reasons for any of them. The main one really is the clarity of mind meditation, because if you can get some continuity and familiarity with clarity of mind meditation, that will become a really good jumping off point for more advanced meditations on the mind. So of all of them, that's the one to definitely repeat, is clarity of the mind meditation. Yeah, Dana, go ahead.
Yeah, unfortunately I won't be able to myself. I have to work on the practice day, so I'll be doing a practice day on my own. But while I have the opportunity, and not to put you on the spot, but kind of to put you on the spot, do how do we learn if you'll be teaching more of these modules, or where we can? I got a random email to know that you were teaching this module, and so I hopped on it. But to kind of, to keep in the loop, I guess. That's my question.
Yeah. I mean, definitely get on the Ocean of Compassion mailing list and the Land of Medicine Buddha mailing list. The next person to teach Discovering Buddhism is Venerable Angie, and she's also a nun like myself, and she's lovely, and she's very knowledgeable, and she's particularly good at leading meditations. She's really brilliant, and she has a Scottish accent, so that's quite pleasant. So very much recommend Venerable Angie. She's amazing. And for classes that I'm offering online, you can always find on my own personal website. It's just yönten.com, should get you there, I think. So whatever I'm teaching online is usually up there. And if you're in the Portland, Oregon area, of course, you're always welcome to come to Maitripa College and come to classes with Yangzi Rinpoche and myself. That's where I'm based.
So, thank you.
Very much. Yeah, and let's see, Shantideva Israel also has a lot of the Discovering Buddhism stuff on their channel, but there's kind of no substitute for doing it live. I really recommend, if you can do it live, to do it live, because then you really get that experience of being in a community, and you get that access to the teacher a lot more directly. Yeah. Any other questions, you guys? Good? Clear enough? Clear enough? Yeah. The sky, not the clouds. right? You're going to be a Buddha someday. Hang on to those ideas. Yep. And yes, negative states of mind are adventitious and they agitate you. So if you feel unsettled and agitated, don't make any big life decisions until you settle down. Those are the main points, which you probably knew before we started. Okay, so thank you so much, everyone, and happy practicing. And we'll dedicate the merit. Jantu Sancho Rinpoche, Ma Ke Panam Ke Gyochi, Ke Panyamba Me Payam, Gone Gondu Pelwa Sho, Tony Dawa Rinpoche, Ma Ke Panam Ke Gyochi, Ke Panyamba Me Payam, Gone Gondu Pelwa Sho. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. And thank you, Ocean of Compassion, for hosting, and I'll see some of you on the practice day.
Thank you, Rinpo
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Venerable.
you, guys.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay.